Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Today, we have with us Professor Sonata Stendiuliene. She's a professor, she's an associate professor at the Faculty of Economics and Management at Vytautas Magnus University, located in Kaunas, Lithuania. And her research areas encompass human resource management, business ethics, organizational design, organizational behavior, international corporate strategies, sports management, and introduction to management. She has an extensive international experience and has lectured in countries such as Indonesia, Canada, Spain, Italy, Turkey, and Japan. I would like to thank Professor Sonata on behalf of our Office of International Affairs for kindly agreeing to deliver this lecture on international human resource management for our students in the administration course at Montes Claros campus. Thank you very much, Professor, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I hope you are ready for my lecture, and for me it's the pleasure to visit your beautiful country and to see a lot of colleagues in my area. And I would like you introduce to a specific topic of international human resource management. Because I teach management as a field as well as separate course for international students visiting Lithuania as well in human resources management. So international human resource management is one of the topic, usually the last from the schedule of that course. So the topics for this hour and a half you see here. We will start from the environment, about internalization of business and how it relates to HR. HRM, I would use such an abbreviation. So human resources, it's HR, and HRM, it is human resources management, usually used abbreviations in that field in the literature. The next topic is inter-country differences affecting on HRM. Then a little bit about international assignments and problematics in that area. And we will end up with the particularities of the HRM activities for international human resources management. So let's start. The first topic is about internalization of business and how it relates to HRM, international HRM. We have trends that a lot of transnational companies accounts for more than 2/2 of world trades, and the top 100 companies account a high percentage of worldwide sales and assets and employment, and physical locations nowadays of value creation is very difficult to determine. Much of the force of globalization comes from mergers and acquisitions. It means one company can acquire another company, or they merge together to be mighty in the market. And also we should take into account outsourcing trend to low labor countries. First, manufacturing it was on the stage. Now it more goes with the processing services and even for white collar works. And we can be employers of the companies in different parts of the world, even in white collar works. I mean administration personal activities. So let's start about global environment impact on international HRM. The environment in which organizations operate is rapidly becoming a global one, and we can't stand behind globalization. It's such a river which flows with the water, and it never ends, and it's in constant flow. You can't stop it simply. Foreign countries can provide the businesses with the new markets, and they are trying to introduce new markets. Companies set up operations overseas, and they have different reasons, but most of all, it is because lower labor costs. Sometimes it can be because of technological advantages or more qualitative labor force and so on. Technology makes easier for the companies to spread work around the globe, especially talking about distant mode of working, which was experienced in the 100% during pandemic. Global activities are simplified and encouraged by trade agreements among nations, and one of the examples we have European Union, when you can freely move from one country to another country to work for different organizations and move with your tax-paying activities as well. We should talk about organizations who need employees who understand different kind of customers and suppliers in different foreign countries. And this is talking about multicultural skills. Organizations need to understand not only multicultural, but as well as laws, customs that apply to employees in other countries. And the corner, you can see simple examples how representatives from different nations even greet each other when they arrive to other country, and to see that even greeting can be an issue if you don't know other cultures and you don't know how to greet people from other department of your global company. So you should learn to do that. Okay, talking further about international human resources management, we should get in the concept. We can describe it as concerning the human resources problems and issues of multinational firms, of course, global ones as well, in foreign subsidiaries, with the unfolding of human resources issues that are associated with various stages of internalization process of particular company. So we will talk mostly about expat rates. Expat rates are employees assigned to work in another country. And who can say that we never will be those? I think that we shouldn't say no. And it can be in our future. So let's try to get deep in. When organizations operate overseas, they hire a combination of human resources. They can be from parent country nationals. Of course, it won't be majority usually, but still companies, even global companies, they prefer to have, well, sometimes spying managers, sometimes controlling, sometimes even coordinating, monitoring the processes for the global headquarters. To know what is happening in particular department somewhere in another part of the world. So that's why they need parent country nationals and of course host country nationals, those who are from origin from particular country we have subsidiary, and it can be also third country nationals not related with the headquarters country or host country we have a subsidiary. So another country not related with that. Some statistics. Most frequently selected by the statistics, it's USA, 20%, China, 30%, UK, 12%. Of course, these figures can fluctuate, but for the understanding of the proportions. They say that most challenging expat rating tests in China, 16% of representatives says this, to India, as well as to Russia. And below you can see breakdown of international assignment by type, and most of them are long-term, as you see, 64%, short-term 22%, one way, others are in minimum. So you see that long-term expat rating is the most common. And what does it mean long-term? It depends, you will see examples later, but it can be usually several years. Short term, maybe we are talking only about months, but usually you can't do a lot during several months. So it is preferred to prepare employees for international departments to work at least for several years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or etc. So how it is created these circumstances for expatriating. So when we are talking about internationalization strategy and international human resources management, we should understand that companies go through all the processes when they develop and grow up. So first, usually they have only domestic scale. Young startups usually starts from one country. It's natural. So it is domestic company with a corporate headquarters only in parent country. You see nothing in host countries area. Then increasing participation in global market starts if everything is successful with that country, with that corporation. And usually domestic country company, especially in small economies. So Lithuania can be a perfect example for small economy phenomena. When you quickly grow up your market, because only several million of citizens in one country. Maybe it's not the case of Brazil, but you should be familiar that when we are talking about smaller country, you would quickly get into international phase instead of domestic when country is huge, like Brazil. So here you can be longer, be only in domestic area. But if you are developing, you are growing up, and your activity is successful, it's only the question of time and as you see, scale of the country and the market, you could go to international area to work. And then you have the same corporate headquarters in your parent country, but you already look for possibilities to initiate foreign subsidiaries in other countries. Especially it is the rule to establish these foreign subsidiaries near your country, around to neighbor countries. When you see that it is successful and in other countries your product services are successful, so usually when growing up you are also making decision to establish more and more foreign subsidiaries, and you are growing up to multinational mode of corporation. And here still you have in parent country usually corporate headquarters and variety of foreign subsidiaries around. And of course, it's not for all companies, but if it's successful, you can go to the global level, and these foreign subsidiaries are getting also somehow in mutual scheme dividing their jobs because of different labor costs, different technological access, different, let's say, raw materials possible in one or another country. So then they, of course, collaborate how to be the most effective being a global company and having different foreign subsidiaries in different regions, because global company have the strategic goal to be usually in the most important cities and regions of the world. So usually it is taken into account. Okay, so usually still you are global or international, but take to account Porter's opinion that you can think globally in your strategic meaning, but sometimes you should take more to account what is going on in local area and think globally, but act locally. So it depends, of course, but still it differs. In some organizations, especially in the first phases, the early stages of internalization, international HRM can be more ethnocentric. What does it mean? Usually the rules, culture, and other things comes from headquarters. Further, when organization getting more and more multinational, multi-local strategies are created, and company goes from ethnocentric to more regional ways, and usually closer and closer to the global thinking when we have more multinational and global thinking that It depends, and we can choose a variety of practices, what works better for a particular situation, and it shouldn't be everything how it goes in this headquarters. Okay, let's go to the next topic. So here we can talk about differences, and they are related with the different countries, and these differences affect on HRM, and they are in these areas: in culture, education, economic system, and political legal system. So they affect global HRM. Let's start from the cultural factors. So culture, as you know, it's community's set of shared assumptions about how the world works and what ideals are worth to strive for. And culture, of course, are related with other factors, kind of country laws. Culture, why it's important for HRM. Culture influences what people value. So it affects people economical systems and efforts to invest, let's say, in education. Cultural characteristics influence the ways personnel of the organization behave towards one another, as well as the attitudes towards various HRM practices. Cultural differences can affect how people communicate and how they coordinate activities. And for expatriate assignments, organizations may need to conduct an extensive selection process to identify individuals who can adopt the new environment, but because maybe expatriating is even not for all of us. And organization must prepare those managers and other employees for expatriation to recognize and handle cultural differences. So it's better to, because of these factors, to recruit employees for expatriating with the knowledge of other cultures and open to learn, and to provide training to get better in these situations. Another factors group, it's about education and skill level factors. Companies with the foreign operations locate in countries where they can find suitable employees. Even global companies analyzes the situation in a particular country and only then make decision to establish subsidiary here or not, because they should have possible to work employees, enough skillful, having enough of competence. So because if not, so to train or to have army of expatriates, maybe it is too expensive then. So it's under consideration. The next thing is that education and skill levels of country labor force affect how and the extent to which companies want to operate here. And believe me, from the practice, I know the first questions also, a lot of foreign subsidiaries companies were coming to Lithuania, especially to free economical zones with a huge factories plans. And the first question they were asking the municipality representatives: will it be able to employ such employees? Do you have potential for that, let's say, technological area? How many universities you have in that particular specialty? Would it be able for us to have enough of suitable human resources? So usually these questions are first, and only then goes other questions about, let's say, can I buy land, or how many years I would shuffle the documentation for building the factory, and so on and so on. First question is about the most important resources. It is human resources, as we understand in modern understanding of management. And in countries with a poorly educated population, companies will limit their activities to low skill, low wage jobs. And on contrary, if you are famous about your high education, qualitative specialization of your potential labor force, then you would be offered, let's say, to build some particular special factories, service centers, and so on, because it depends what kind of employees we can get in the region. Another part of the factors are related to economics, and the economic system provides many of the incentives or disincentives for developing the value of labor force. In developed countries with a great wealth, labor costs are relatively high. This impacts compensation and staffing practices. Income tax differences between countries make pay structures more complicated even when they cross national boundaries. And of course, talking about foreign subsidiaries, of course, most common to establish these subsidiaries in low wages countries, but it depends what kind of products we would like to produce or services to provide. Maybe on country, we are expected high quality, so then the labor cost is relatively expected to be higher. So it depends on the situation. And the last portion of factors are about political legal system. So the country's laws often dictate the requirements for HRM practices. So of course, we first should analyze these laws, what kind of practices are expected about training, compensation especially, hiring requirements, firing, because sometimes it is very difficult to fire employees from the company. We have a lot of examples in European Union about that. And let's say how to organize layoffs. Are they possible even in reality? So it depends on the country's laws. So HRM sometimes can be in cultural meaning different in different countries, but still you can go with your practices to another country and you can see that it can be illegal even, and you shouldn't do like this. You should change your practice or reject that possibility of that country for foreign subsidiary. An organization that expands internationally must gain expertise in the host country's legal requirements and ways of dealing with the legal system. Is the bottom line. You should analyze and to know what you can do and what you shouldn't, and then only to create your own rules. And organizations will hire one or more host country nationals to help in the process. Organizations establish overall policies and goals for labor relations, overseeing labor agreements and monitoring labor performance. The day-to-day decisions about labor relations are usually handled by each foreign subsidiaries. Okay, let's take to account some peculiarities, and sometimes in the literature and the practice, several aspects are discussed. Let's say differences, cultural differences, let's say between European HRM and USA specificity. Maybe USA practices are more known for your region, but let's take to account these two Western practices. They are not the same at all. So when in USA, when hiring, firing employees, dealing with HR, emphasis is on individuals and on the management. In Europe, it's quite another way. So we have a very strong social partners of the companies, especially in public sector. And the stakeholders are very important for all companies in Europe. As well, governmental interventions usually are more common by laws. It's more restricted employer autonomy. Market processes are various, and emphasis are on workers, especially in old good Europe part. And emphasis is more on the group of employees instead of vice versa, individual workers as in USA. Because in Europe, let's say in Germany and in France, it's common to have collective bargaining about compensation systems of even groups of new potential candidates to vacations. So in Europe, you can find different practices of HRM, and these differences, let's say, comparing with the USA, it can be related to the cultural things as well as legal things as well. But still, we can argue that the need of, as we can call European managers, it's increasing. because European managers are able to think in European, but still mostly because they are localized in their attitudes and behaviors. As previously I said that we should think global, but act local. It means glocal, yeah? So localized in their attitudes and behavior, because Europeans better understand local nuances in the taste and preference. Why? Because Europe consists of different smaller countries, more smaller than Brazil or USA. And we have a lot of nations, ethnic groups, and they have different cultures, religions, languages, and so on. You should be able to manage people of different cultural heritage and nationality in a flexible way when working in Europe, bringing a diverse team together. You should be able and learn at least one foreign language plus. If in USA, they can say it's enough to learn American English and I can communicate with everyone, in Europe, it won't work. So you can learn English, it's good. But plus, it's very good to know at least one more language, at least the most common, or from particular country. Let's say Germany, France, or another country you would work. And especially this trend is important after Brexit, when we already haven't UK in European Union, but of course, it's another case. And you see that European expat rates can be more cultural sensitive, more being able to work with a diverse workforce, what is needed for expatriating, comparing with the Americans, which are more strong on individual perspective and unifying one culture on the whole. So why I'm talking about these things for you? This is a question about possibility of international assignments. So they say never say never. So it's about international assignment possibility. Would you consider taking a foreign assignment for, let's say, 6 months or 1 year duration? Yes or no? I'm leaving several seconds to think for you. And of course, it's your answer for you. But especially if yes, or as I recommended, you never say no. So before you took a foreign assignment, what would you want to know? I think you should have plenty of questions. And today I will try to answer at least to the main of them. Okay, so let's start. Because never know, maybe we are talking about possibility of international assignment when you already are working in particular company, and this company can offer you to be an expatriate to work for some period of time for another subsidiary or headquarters somewhere in the world. Or you can simply be immigrant to some country and look for better fortune and to try not to be expatriate, but still to change your location and the country for living. And then you would try to find your own country and your own organization you would fit. And these reasons can be various, as you will see. So, about international assignments, how to somehow manage all the situation. First, we should start why we should do that. And you should ask yourself as well. And HRM specialists, they organize everything in organization. Also, they should ask themselves why employees should be motivated to go abroad to work. So motives to use foreign assignment. First, we can talk about managers acquiring international skills. So then, of course, they develop themselves as the personalities, and possibly they would be better employees in the future, especially taking into account the international nature of their own company and future career possibilities. As well as, of course, for the company itself, it's very important to send expatriates, especially managers, for coordinating and controlling operation for dispersed activities in their own subsidiaries, and communication of local needs, strategic information to headquarters to get feedback from the subsidiary to the company in order to better rule global business. But let's talk about usual situation and especially emotional situation associated with a foreign assignment. How expatriate or immigrant usually feels himself, herself. First phase after the moving, it is usually called honeymoon. So the same after marriage. So first month, everything is in bright colors, everything is fabulous, new, you are curious, and you are open to new practices. It should be with that position to start expatriating or immigration, because if not, so of course it's disaster. So first should be honeymoon. And afterwards, usually cultural shocks begins. What does it mean? You are finding things you don't understand, you don't like, you even would like to reject, and how to avoid cultural shock. It means that I didn't expect this. I didn't think that it would be like this. They promised another things. I thought that it would be in different way, and so on. And you see that it doesn't fit for you. You don't like it, so maybe I did wrong decision. So it usually starts in second and further months of your foreign assignment. And still, after cultural shock, after several months, relief should come with the recovery phase, when you say for yourself that, okay, it's different culture, different people. I'm starting to understand how they think. I understand that they have different arguments. They live like they live for ages. Who am I to tell them how to live and work? So maybe I would try to be in this game and try to enjoy it. So it's recovery and adjustment. But of course, this process can be stopped in some phase if we fail to be expatriates. But if not, if everything is okay, we go usually through this process. What kind of cultural shock usually is faced? So several examples of impressions. So a visitor from expatriate from India says about Americans. Americans are in perpetual hurry. Just watch the way they walk down the street. They never allow themselves the leisure to enjoy life. There are too many things to do for them. And for expatriating from India, it's not understandable how not to enjoy life because of the job. Expatriated from Ethiopia said the American is very explicit. He wants yes or no. If someone tries to speak figuratively, the American is confused. So yes or no. So it's cultural differences, as you see. Another opinion from Colombian people. The tendency in the United States to think that life is only work hits you in the face. Work seems to be the one type of motivation. And we will end with the opinion from Iranian people. The first time my American professor told me I don't know the answer, I will have to look it up, I was shocked. I asked myself, why he is teaching me? In my country, a professor would give the wrong answer rather than to admit ignorance. So as you see, culture is different. And of course, people can not understand one each other, but to know what I'm also doing, traveling, it's a very good experience, because after a lot of traveling, sometimes you even don't understand how it can be, but still you are starting to be able to tolerate. It's the first phase for relief and recovery. You are starting to discuss things with the new colleagues and start to understand the another party arguments and start to say, okay, it can be possible, saying yes, that also it can be done in that way. Still, sometimes, as I said, process can be broken in the middle, and reasons for expat rates failure usually are those from the statistics. Managers usually fail to adapt because of the personality of the expatriating manager, rejecting other cultures, not being able to tolerate, etc. Also, level of responsibility, because we are taking into account not only the job itself, but everything what is related with the move itself, with the family, responsibility for being a representative of that company, and so on. Also, it can be lack of technical proficiency, or I think the main is no motivation for assignment. Also, one very good reason is because spouse fails to adapt, because as you can understand, one spouse from the family can get expatriation, but what about another party? They can be left at home, but then sometimes family are distorted. In another way, let's say spouse goes with the husband or wife, but then it is difficult to find the job for another spouse. It can be, let's say, losing in career perspective, even in money, difficulties to get in the new job, and of course, other problems with the family, especially children. What about kindergarten, schools? What language of schools, and where's hospitals? Where's the whole infrastructure, and so on and so on. So believe me, it's easier to be immigrant or expatriated employees when you are single and in young age, not having children yet. Or on contrary, at later phases when you are manager in some position, but already children are grown up. But then usually it is difficult because of health reason, and of course it is difficult to take into account other countries' cultural perspectives, because you better know how to do things. Usually I'm talking about older generation representatives, sorry. Okay, so reputation reverse culture shock, it can also happen, you know, when people are used to work for some country for a lot of years. You can imagine that after this, you are called to come back to your position in your, let's say, headquarters, and you don't want. It can happen, isn't it? So virtually all operated personal experience some personal difficulties in reintegrated on return home, and job-related factors can be like, they can feel it out of sight, out of mind. They can feel that everybody forgotten about me. I have done a lot of good things for the company, but nobody have seen this, and they even don't know. And they forgot me as a colleague. And for me, it's a kind of being new employee. Also, loss of status and pay relatively peaking. Sometimes it's easy in your own company headquarters or your subsidiary not moving out. Sometimes it's loss of autonomy, lack of recognition of the value of the experience you got. Nobody understands the difficulties you overcome. And also lack of career direction, because somebody can feel that they have broken their career in some part, and somehow you should, return to some path. And also social factors, the same as in previous slides. So expatriates must relearn own national and organizational culture. And you know, sometimes immigrants and expatriates, they are returning to home country, but they already should relearn the culture in some places, because they always are saying, but in that country, it used to do like this and that, why you're doing in this way? So they forgot their own country culture. And this is also natural, because maybe they found better practices in some areas. And as well, the same about family. problems of spouse returning to the workplace, because sometimes it means that to find new job because nobody waits for spouse in previous job. Lack of peer support for teenagers. For teenagers, always it is difficult to travel and to leave schools, new friends, forgot languages. Sometimes after being expatriates for a lot of years, they even don't know local language at all. Let's say it happened in Lithuania for a lot of young families. They moved, let's say, to UK or for Norway to work for some years, and then they brought children back, because now with the better economical situation in Lithuania every year, a lot of immigrants are coming back, but they are coming with already Norwegian or English only talking, speaking children. And let's guess what waits for them in their schools, friends, and other areas. So it's also difficult, and sometimes it's even more difficult because of their family reasons. So not only expatriating, but repatriation also can be issue. So also you should analyze everything what was discussed previously and to take your arguments. Is it worth to do that? And only then we can go to the next part. If still you are curious, and especially if you can find yourself in the headquarters or other departments working in HR, it is very important to understand how HRM activities slightly differs from the common activities and techniques and methods used in these activities. So the titles, as you see, the same as common activities in HRM: planning of labor force, recruitment, then selection, then rotating and training, then appraisal, compensation, labor relations, and other activities which are used in common case of HRM activities. But still, let's talk about peculiarities, and let's start from the planning. Okay, so how to plan international human resource? Of course, usually these ideas comes from headquarters. These ideas comes from management to the HR department, and it depends. But particular specialist or HRM department managers should plan, and this involves decisions about where and how many employees are needed for each international facility. So it depends on company's values, it depends on culture, it depends on management style even, because if you are more close to classical understanding of management, and especially using micromanagement techniques, it means more tending to control, coordinate situation, how it's going on overseas, and you are afraid that they are doing not right things when you can see them. So you are sending more expatriates, isn't it? And on contrary, if you are more liberal as a manager, and you can think that the laissez-faire principle works everywhere, like in the market, labor market as well. So you can think that you should give kind of freedom and a lot of flexibility for your employees to do what they know they should do. So expatriating wouldn't be very used for your subsidiaries. So it depends. But still, more or less, most foreign subsidiaries, at least one manager sends to that subsidiary to see how it's going on in particular countries. And you will see a lot of practices of different even countries from Europe, how they treat the situation, as well as from USA mostly. Because from Western management schools, usually we learn from USA practices, from European countries' practices and usually deliver these practices for our students, international students in our studies in our universities, as well as best practices, as we understand. Sometimes some Eastern practices, especially Japanese practices, also are in consideration. Talking about planning of international human resources, decisions about where to locate includes considerations such as cost and, of course, availability of qualified workers. And if we can find qualified workers in particular country, we would need less expatriated managers. If we are not so lucky, so more expatriated employees would be likely to expatriate to particular country. These considerations must be weighted against financial and operational requirements, because in classical perspective, you would want to send a lot of expatriates, but is it in financial meaning pays off? I would take to consideration. So as well about operational requirements, sometimes it's long journeys, it's difficult to adapt to different countries, and it can cost a lot, not in financial meaning even. Other location decisions involve outsourcing. So maybe you should expatriate not your own employees, but to outsource some auditing, consulting companies, or other services, instead of you to give you feedback or coordinate or control something you would like to know in particular foreign subsidiaries, instead of expatriating. And other locations are, of course, usually possible for different outsourcing perspectives. So a little bit of peculiarities and examples that planning and staffing practices in different countries can differ. So career management system to represent formal HR planning, but still inappropriate in Islamic countries, vice versa determinant in Europe. Let's say example of France, they prefer computerized system and kind of engineering approach for HR, counting by statistics, how many, let's say in proportions, expatriates we need for particular subsidiary. In US, concrete results, it means criteria for selection and promotion, and it's on country in UK or in France. Here, school or family backgrounds matter more for consideration for expatriation. Let's say, talking about Japanese, for them, job description are vague. And me, myself, I was in Japan and also enjoyed mobility in one of the universities and try to grasp how they differ, and they differ a lot from Western practices for management and especially HR. And as you know, it's the same. They confirm that it is how it's written in the textbook, that for them it's very important to the person and potential of that person to be loyal to the company and to develop with the company in the long term. And for them, job description or diplomas not so matters. They are kind of flexible to put persons where they fit, and with the uncertainty to strengthen the bond with individuality. And on the contrary, in USA, and let's say France, because here job descriptions and specialties are more specified, more job mobility between organizations possible. And in Japan, still you enter one job, let's say, in one company, and you can work in one company till the end of your career or till death even. You know, here career is very slow in comparing, because everything is on country. In United States, let's say, because in United States, planning is you are interesting for us, so we are taking. And if not, from tomorrow you are fired, and that's it. So it's different attitude to the planning and staffing and practice in different countries and regions, as you see. And most vice versa regions are Western and Eastern world. Still, they are different world, as I understand from the practice as well, not only theoretically I'm talking. Let's say in France, they value more math, sciences, diplomas. In USA, UK, they need more generalists, let's say from HR sector. And Europeans are more international orientated than USA. As I already mentioned, USA employees expatriated, usually they use only one at the most several languages. Europeans talk small languages, and they can grasp better international differences between different employees. Okay, so let's imagine that the HR specialist already analyzed the situation. They discussed with the managers how many and what kind of expat rates we need for particular subsidiary in particular country, and they build a plan. So in human counting, so how many of humans we need, what kind of specialty, managers or professionals, and then we can go to the next activity from HR. So it is recruiting. Recruiting, not for simple positions, but for international assignments. So first, as always, it is motivation. Are you motivated to go to work abroad? Are you interested about that? Are you curious at least? So only if we see the interest, we can go to another phase. So here we can go to the health situation as well. So of course, it is difficult to understand the situation, and even by laws, we can't discriminate people because of their health status. So we can't ask directly, do you have some diseases, problems? You can be expatriates, but still you should ask in another way. Not discriminating persons, but still some health concerns. Because of them, you can be suitable for international assignments. And what you can expect, especially for because of European laws, GDPR, which are against knowing a lot of peculiarities of personality, and it prohibits to ask and to know what employees don't want to say. So you can suppose that employee would say the truth, and that's it. Especially in Europe, of course, it depends on law in different countries. It's more, let's say, free situation in USA. Maybe you better know what the situation in Brazil, but still you expect that potential candidate for international assignment would say truth about the health situation. Because if not, and we are taking into consideration not only physical status, but as well as psychological, social status, because it's very important. Because sometimes happens even suicides when after the burnout and difficult psychological states, expatriates can't cope with the problems, let's say losing families, relations, feeling loneless, and so on. And a lot of different accidents can happen. So we should be firm here and try to be open as possible with your potential candidate for international assignment. If it's okay, we can go further. If it's not, you're rejecting the candidate and looking for another one. The next one is language abilities, and would you be able to communicate with the local people? Not especially with a particular language, but maybe understandable language like English or German or other language a lot of people talks and speaks this language. The next question is family consideration. If language ability is not enough, they can be taught in some period of time, let's say to finance courses of English or German or French or Spanish or Portuguese for, let's say, half a year or a year before preparing for an international assignment. It can be, it's not rare practice, long-term preparation for international assignments, let's say learning languages. And then only we can go to the next question about family consideration. And we already explained what peculiarities we can have with this. So do we have any constraints here? Would it be possible to go to abroad, taking into consideration your family status? And then resourcefulness, and then being able to bring value for particular subsidiary, as well as adaptability, flexibility to another culture, another infrastructure, being open to another practices. It's about personal features of candidate, as well as career planning, why it can be useful for your career for the future. Are you considering other expatriating experiences afterwards, maybe international career abroad? And of course, usually at the end, financial perspective. Would you, let's say, expect higher salary? But we will talk about this issue later at the end of this presentation. So reasons, as you see for recruiting, let's say in UK, from one research, you can see that what about graduation rank? It's unimportant for the French managers. Technical and specialist skills, not a major consideration for the English, Italians, or Spanish. International work experience, more important to the French and Italians. Graduation rank of a little importance for France. Academic background and age of very little importance. Culture and nationality, the English, French, Italians place high importance on the job candidates' cultural national origin than in comparing with the Germans and Spanish respondents. So even these, as you can consider small, but not so small countries in Europe can have different attitude and different practices. So I mean, in different cultures, you can develop different HR practices, and still you're working for multinational companies. So let's talk about selecting. So you have done different interviews with different potential candidates about international assignments. These potential candidates, they can be from parent country, from headquarters, but not at all only. It can be third countries' nationals as well. So foreigners for both countries. It also can be possible because they are immigrants, let's say, in that country, or they are from other foreign subsidiaries and would like to switch countries. It can be a variety of ways to find potential candidates. So then you have, as always, after the recruiting, candidates pool, as it's called. Yeah, so candidates pool, it's a list of candidates, and then we should filter them, and it shouldn't be one from one. So we in Soviet Union times were selecting one from one. It's not real election, you know. In democracy, we should have at least several candidates for selecting. So we should build some criteria list as well. So it can be competency in employees' area of expertise, ability to communicate in the foreign country. We should measure this ability and compare among candidates. Flexibility, tolerance on the ambiguity, and sensitivity to cultural differences because of already mentioned reasons and possibilities of issues. Motivation to succeed, enjoyment of challenges, willingness to learn about foreign countries' culture, language, customs, and support from the family members as well. So you build criteria for filtering your potential candidate list, and then trying to select the best candidate. And in the practice, you know, also selection and socialization can differ. Let's say in IBM, a very good known company, because of trying to avoid power accumulation of managers, they use moving them every 2 years. It's a program called I've Been Moved. But does it work for Italy? Very good. More political than instrumental orientated practice it is in the real situation. Boot camps tactics of IBM from origin, as you know, from USA, it's to create professional armies of corporate soldiers. But it's not well accepted in Europe. Here, it's about groups of people and their rights, you know. Artifacts of cultural corporate culture in USA seen in Europe even as an intrusion into the private realm of the individual. In USA, formal impersonal control usually used, vice versa. In Europe, informal personal control usually is used, especially in selection and socialization in practice. So as you see, it depends and on cultural things as well. Okay, let's agree that after recruiting and selecting, we already have a new brand employee, and he or she is going through socialization and training phase. So when organizations hire employees to work in a foreign country, the employer needs to provide the employees with a training in how to handle the challenges associating with the working in a foreign country. It's a very huge mistake not to help expat rates because of previously mentioned hazards about suicides, about bad impressions and experience, not willingness to return to the home country, and so on and so on. So you should take into consideration that company leading the expat rate to the new country should be able to help as possible for new employee expatriated. International differences among trainees developing is a training plan, and it depends on the trainee. It depends on the language, on the professional level, on the cultural understanding of particular region, on the level of differences of the regions that are switched. And preparing employees and their family members for the assignment in foreign countries follows. Not only employees, but as well family members. So sometimes we're talking not only with the employees as HR specialists, but with the whole family, how to cope with that. And the training covers all 3 phases of international assignment. So first, preparation for departure. So it should be done before leaving the country. The assignment itself, so its movement with a particular, I don't know, maybe goals or even plan what it should be done in particular country you are moving for. And preparation for return home also should be led by the HR specialist from the headquarters, because as I mentioned, it can also be problematic, especially after a long year expatriation. Okay, so here you see that it depends on the level of differences of the region. It depends on the difficulties to learn new culture, languages, and other things. If the differences are huge, we have high training rigor. So techniques, it's field trips to host country first. So you are visiting the country, but still not for expatriating, but to see around. Do you like it? Would you be able to live here for several years? And then you are returning to your home country and saying yes or no, but still trying. Yeah, it's pilot research for let's say 1 week, 1 month. It can be possible. Meetings with the managers experienced in the host country, meetings with the host country national, intensive language training, and then only understanding, do you want this or not? And objectives is develop comfort with the host country national culture, business culture, and social institutions. If differences are not so huge, we can take mid-level training rigor, because of course pilot research It can be costly. It can consume time. Sometimes we don't have. So sometimes mid-level, it's enough. And techniques are experiential learning, exercises, role-playing, simulations, case studies, survival, language training for basic understanding. And objectives are general and specific knowledge of host country culture, reduce ethnocentrism at least. And if difficulties are not so huge and differences are quite limited, so it's enough of techniques kind of lectures, some videos, reading background material, sometimes even personally, and objectives is provide only with the background information on host country business and national cultures, basic information on company's operations. So you see, from the situation, it depends what kind of socialization and training should we provide as HR specialist for expatriate or immigrant. Okay, so how to prepare expatriate in this training and socialization process. So as you saw already, pre-assignment site visit can be organized, job orientation program can be exhibited, country orientation, cultural orientation, language training, compensation benefits, taxes, counseling, housing counseling, healthcare, schools, shopping, recreation, counseling, especially if we have some specialists and knowing a particular culture, country, counseling by returning expatriates as well afterwards, and local sponsorship from a host country. So HR specialists should organize these activities with a different rigor. You should choose what rigor you have. So from this, you take decision which extent you would use. Okay, so of course, next is about appraisal, and we have a lot of issues here as well. So how to check what is going on overseas in different countries when you can see? So you can have issues on given unreliable data, complex and volatile environments. They are not giving the real data, time differences and distance separations, difficult to communicate, local cultural situations, let's say to hide problems or on country to talk loudly about that. Differences may include which behaviors are rated, how and the extent to which performance is measured, who performs the rating, how feedback is required, and it depends on culture, on laws, on different things, you know. And well, let's say in some countries, the time of working from 8 to 5, it's very important. In other countries, it's not so important. So it is appraised good or bad. That is the question. It depends on understanding how it's important in particular countries. So you see that appraisal, because of cultural differences, can be an issue. Okay, and I think that for the last part of our activities, as you know, usually at the end of the interviews and the end of the activities list, we can have the most important activity. It's about compensation activity for the international workforce. And this can be the most difficult point to agree. Market pay structures can differ substantially across countries in terms of both pay level and the relative worth of jobs. And this creates a dilemma for global companies. Most of them are in these questions. Should pay levels and differences reflect what workers are used to in their own countries? And another question, should pay levels and differences reflect the earnings of colleagues in the country of the facility or earnings at the company headquarters? Compensation decisions affect the company's cost and ability to compete. And usually you will see that it's even more costly than local employees in the budget. So of course, we should take into consideration competing in low-wage countries, especially can be very difficult. Decisions about benefits must take into account the laws as well of each country involved, as well as employees' expectation and values in those countries. Let's say we should talk about minimum wage, and they can differ from country to country, as well as in some countries you can have, let's say, laws restricting to pay less than particular amount of money because, let's say, this is more professional job than to pay only minimal wage. So you should pay more by the laws. It can be restricted less. So you should know these laws. And of course, expectation and values in those countries. And usually it's some averages for particular professional areas in particular labor markets. And let's say nobody would work for less in that area. And you wouldn't be possible to find employees, or you would find only for short period of time, because let's say some new fresh employees would say that, okay, we will work, but silently would look for the next better job with the best salary. So yeah, it is competing in labor market, and you should know peculiarities and differences in labor price in different regions and in different specialities, because as you can understand, this also differs. Exhibit. Let's say earnings in different occupations in several countries. Take only as an examples, and you can see that in some countries, because of specialty and level of professionalism, years of education spent, you can have more equal or not equal situation in labor market. And let's say, as you see in Germany or in Mexico, the differences between different positions are not very high. Let's take to account the example of South Korea. I don't know why, but bus drivers get huge salaries in consideration, let's say, with the kindergarten teachers or equipment assemblers. Maybe it's more understandable. So as you see, you should do analysis of particular market and prevailing wage rates, salary rates in particular area and specialty. Next thing to take into consideration, the world's most expensive cities. And from this exhibit, you can find that the living cost in different areas of the world can differ very much. Here you can see only the most expensive cities. And sometimes you can think, oh, how would I would like to find a job in Singapore? As you see, in Singapore, let's say you can earn a lot, but let's see, it is even more expensive city than to live in New York. And Zurich, Switzerland, is also a very expensive city. Most of them are quite expensive. Some of them I already visited and can prove this. But still, what I mean, when you hear the proposal of the salary, it's only one part of the information. Then let's try to find, is it suitable expenses in that city with that salary? And it's, you know, you should balance, you should leverage, you should compensate each other. So, well, average hours, one more thing to consideration. Have you ever found that information that people for the same occupational full equivalent of time, they're working different amount of hours? So the most hard workers from this exhibit you can see are employees from South Korea. So maybe salary is quite high in South Korea in some positions, as you saw, but they are working much more than comparing, let's say, France, Norway, or Netherlands, as you see. What we are talking about in South Korea, as I remember, it's about 48 hours per week. When we are talking about some European countries, it is 37, 36, or even 35 hours per week. So the same full-time equivalent, different amount of hours, and in different countries, being on office is treated also in different way. In some places, let's say in Japan, it's valuable to be at the office and to look tired and even to sleep after work at the workplace, not coming home. So it's such a culture, you know, so you should know about that and then to take your own decision. It's for you or you don't want to live like that, you know. So in some other countries, it can be a different situation. Let's say it's not controlled, you are in working place or not. Simply, it's very important that the job should be done, and that's it. And it can depend on global company as well. I don't know if you heard about that, let's say about Tesla, Google, or other companies, their bosses, very known good persons, said that you should return to office. If not, so you're fired. And it's up to you to choose to be with us or not. So it's only one-way communication, as you see. And this thing you should take to account as well. Okay, taking into consideration all these very important things as a factors, thinking what kind of compensation plan to expect and to offer from HR positions. So how to compensate expat rates. It can be different ways. One of this is balance sheet approach. This approach adjusts the manager's compensation so that it gives the manager the same standard of living as in the home country, plus, because usually you expect more, plus extra pay as it called for inconvenience of locating overseas. This approach involves an effort by the global organization to ensure that expat rates are made whole. So you, as you see in the example, you are taking assets, you are taking liabilities and see, is it the same living standards, what prices are, what differences you have, you're counting and seeing at the end, it should be the same sums. And of course, you should find the inconvenience payment. So it looks like that. For home country salary, HR counts that they pays income tax, housing, let's say expenses for employee, it is like that in that country. So then goods and services, usually per month for, let's say, a medium family cost like this and reserve. And goes to the prices of host country costs. And let's say in this examples, and as you see, host country is more expensive. So the next page, you see host country cost paid by company and from salary, and you see additional portions in every part of the compensation plan. And from these parts, you consist the home country equivalent purchasing power. And above, you see premium and incentives. It's inconvenience payment. So this is the logic how to do accounting of this balance sheet approach. But you can use other approaches as well, compensating expat rates. Other approaches can be parent country wages everywhere, and that's it. You can say yes or no, it's up to you. Win expat rates from allowances, pay based on local or region markets, and we don't care about origin country. Also, very interesting cafeteria selection of allowance. So it means that you are giving a lot of opportunities and saying, let's say, you should fit in that sum and please choose from the menu. So as a list of the possible things, let's say payment for the kindergarten if you have children. If you don't have children, maybe you would prefer, let's say, sports activities paid in particular gym center. So it depends on you. And global pay system in global companies are also common, and they have such a structure well unified for the whole global company. Issues with the international compensation balancing. We always consisting the compensation plan, we should think about two sides. If compensation is too high, then problems may be encountered on return to head office because these expatriates wouldn't be willing to return. And on contrary, if compensation is not adequate, then there may be no incentives and candidates to go for international assignments. So you should find the golden middle on this labor market. And some examples from appraisal and compensation in practice. Let's say in Japanese firms, concern for integrity, morality, loyalty, and it depends on this. From MBO, appraisal and compensation systems are linked. Management by objective techniques is under consideration. And you see practice easily transferred in Denmark, decentralization, less emphasis on hierarchy and formalization. But in France, consider it as an exercise of arbitrary power. In one Danish subsidiary, Denmark, one country of European Union, a proposal for incentive for salespeople was turned even down because it is egalitarian spirit on country. In Denmark, one Mercedes can be not enough. Need for chauffeur because it's status concern. And in Sweden, monetary reward less motivating than vacation village because of quality of life it's preferred. And let's say about what is afterwards, pension expected 40% of salary in Southern Europe, vice versa in Northern country, whereas 85%. So it's about inconvenience and afterwards payment and long-term value, yeah. And consideration for the last slide. So let's take a case study. And this case study, of course, relates mostly for our own countries. So I am from Lithuania. Our currency in European Union, it's euros. But for your convenience, I have done this job and you see both currencies in accounting. And with a question about Brazil. So, of course, it would be very interesting to discuss with you directly about these things, but I hope that you would try to figure out your own opinion about expatriating or possibilities to be immigrant, let's say third country national expatriate for particular company. So let's talk about both countries' situation. When we are talking about Brazil, I don't know anything about the prices, so you should do your own research. I think you know in some percentage, and I would deliver information about Lithuania situation or this part of the Europe. You can imagine a more eastern central eastern part of the Europe. Okay, what about expatriation or immigration? You would need apartment rent. I have taken some small one-bedroom flat in capital, let's say. In Lithuania, you would spend 600 euros per month. You see the real amount as well further. Utility fees, you would need to depends. It's new flat or quite old. So it's from 1 to 200 euros. And of course, as in the northern central part of Europe, it's more cold. So you won't use more conditioning, but more heating. So it depends. But from 1 to 200 euros per month for utility fees. We are going next for food. Oh, it depends. If you would cook for yourself at home, it can cost simply for paying for one person for food, I think about 120 euros per month. Of course, if you are a family and you have, let's say, spouse or children, you should double or even more to pay for that. If you are going to a restaurant, having lunch in cafes, let's say, in a break of your work, And especially if you're going for evenings and let's say morning coffee, so you would spend around approximately 500 euros for one person. So it's very approximately, I should say, but I would say my sums if I would act like this. It depends in some range, yeah. So you can, of course, draw your average from your country's reality. And average salary netto per month in Lithuania, I'm talking to hands after paying all the taxes. So it's near to 1,500 euros. But here I'm talking about simple jobs, workers, let's say not managerial jobs. In office, maybe secretary, referees, some help technical personnel would get such a salary. Of course, if we are talking about managers, usually our student says, I'm even not considering option less than 2,000 to hands. Okay, I can cope with the 1,500 maybe for several months, but I'm expect for promotion, you know. When we are talking about managers, of course, in Lithuania, salary would be several thousands at least, normal 5,000 or even more. It depends on your level, you know. So, of course, here it's average salary and mostly it reflects simple jobs because office jobs are less. And in some, you are counting everything. And I hope that you already compared with your own rates in, let's say, your country. Let's take Brazil or other country. And the last question is only for you because I'm not eligible to say the answer. How much would you pay to an employee assigned to Lithuanian subsidiary or somewhere around in Europe? And would you be likely to go abroad to be expatriate or immigrant? From another side, if you are or would like to be HR specialist, what proposal you would give for, let's say, Brazil employee from your country, from your company, to be expatriate somewhere in the Central or Eastern Europe? Let's take the case of Lithuania. What kind of salary proposal in interview when recruiting this candidate for international assignment would you give? So these are the main questions, as you see at the end of this presentation. And of course, these figures can differ, but I hope that they helped you to understand at least the basics, how these compensations plans are consisted, and what is the logic, and maybe what proposal is good and can be taken to consideration. So this case is for you to think, to count for your future. And I hope that all this information I delivered today, it is helpful for you, for your future, to consider a lot of peculiarities when changing your own employment place and maybe moving abroad to work for shorter or longer periods. So if you will do that decision, good luck.
Thank you very much, Professor Sonata. I was here thinking about the living costs, and I believe some of them it's similar to Brazil, maybe utility fees and food for one person, and the costs of for one person and family. I believe it's kind of similar here, but we do have some questions from our participants that are watching us on YouTube. And do you have time to answer some of these questions?
Yes, of course.
So
I would stop sharing to see everything. Okay?
Sure, no problem.
So we can talk.
So we have a question from the channel administration in few words. It's administração em poucas palavras in português. It is a channel created by Professor André Luiz Ataide. He's a professor of administration here at UFMG. And he has two questions. I will make the first one. He says, companies sometimes focus their attention on how to deal with expatriation. However, we know that it is necessary to think about the employees' return to their original company. What are the main challenges for repatriation?
So one is very important, as I already said, is compensation plan. If it's very good in a foreign country, why to return? And you will have problems. If the compensation plan is not so good, so maybe likely you would return your employee. The same is about culture, the same is about, because it depends also, as I mentioned, about how many years are already spent in that country. After a long period of time, 5 and more years, yeah, it would be difficult to return. It can be rejected.
Yes. And his second question. As you know, the values of a multinational company may be much different from the employees' in the individual values from different national cultures. For instance, a company may try to enhance collectivism within groups, but employees may come from very individualistic cultures. How to combine both, taking into account that culture are formed, not adjusted overnight?
It's difficult. There's no clear answer, of course. One thing is what I mentioned is about being able to tolerate. It's being flexible and to understand other positions, other values, to think that it can be in this way as well. Maybe I think it's not the best way, but it can be, you know. So it's the start from being able to tolerate other opinion, other values. And always I would say, as we have a saying, being in Rome, be a Roman. It means don't try to establish your own order, ethnocentric management in different locations. You can deliver your examples, your values, that in our country we do like this. But first, try to, as I usually do as well, try to play that game. You've got the rules in the host country and get in that game. Maybe you would like. So this would be my answer.
Perfect. So we have more, we have two other questions. And it's from the channel Internacionalização em Casa, Internalization at Home. And they are asking, even though English language is considered the universal language for work and science, do you think that language is still a challenge for HRM nowadays?
Oh, well, depends in what country we are. But still, let's say you should analyze the situation in a particular country, what languages they are speaking, and which languages are possible to communicate. Let's say you should know. In Lithuania, for example, it's also distinct situation. If you meet in the street older people, usually they are talking Russian. Less of them English, because of the political situation. We were occupied for 50 years, and they were not able to learn English in very good way and in a better level. So old people, pension period people, usually they are talking Lithuanian and Russian, sometimes German. And if we are talking about youth, sometimes even they talk English better than Lithuanian, you know, and some other languages they learn as well. Well, also peculiarities can be in different countries because of different reasons, you know. let's say, I believe that something will change in Europe after Brexit, because we don't need the English inside of Europe. Still, it's common language to communicate. But believe me, Germany's French people trying to talk in their language and say that they are mighty nations with the good languages. So it depends, you should do your own research. And still, of course, it's convenient to talk one language and to understand, but cultural motives are very strong as well.
Thank you, Professor. So we have one last question.
Mhm.
And it's what theoretical empirical gap in the literature of HRM still needs to be filled?
I think it comes from practical situations and peculiarities in different cultural regions, because it's difficult to find, let's say, balancing, leveraging different practices of particular two countries. You can do a lot of researches, let's say Brazil and Lithuania. I don't know such a research. Is it constituting to one, or they have major differences? I don't know. So because of possible differences, we don't know. We can do the research. So you can do, let's say, survey in one country, survey another country about the possibility of expatriation, and then comparing, are they fitting or not? Where's the main gaps? Where's fitting areas, and so on? Maybe.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Sonata. I would like to thank you again on behalf of our Dean of International Affairs, Professor Aziz Saliba, and our Deputy Dean of International Affairs, Professor Barbara Orfanó. And it was a great lecture, and I hope to see you on Friday here in the campus from Pune.
Yes, of course. And thank you for welcoming, and of course, being met everywhere and helped in all my paths. So I hope it was interesting and fruitful lecture today, and I hope to see you again. Till next time.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching us and for your questions. Bye.
Bye.